Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. So everybody wants to know when the hell alt season is, and I'm gonna tell you. So the other thing I want to mention too is when we get up to these highs, everybody's calling for a triple top here. I just want to mention that everybody's been calling for the top the entire the entire way. I mean, this is gonna fail here. Oh, it's gonna fail. Oh, it's gonna fail. Oh, it'll never. Anyway, the whole way up, basically, the market climbs a wall of worry. And typically, you kind of want people to be bearish, honestly, because once everybody's bullish, that's when things are typically cooked. And I also want to mention here too, we had the tariff scare, right? And then I don't know, can you see in this chart where the scare was for the war? Because I can't. You know, we had all this war scare over the weekend. Everybody was freaking out, and we went up on Monday. And so it also looks like we're approaching a three-time breakout. If I put this on the weekly chart, this is a GAN signal I talk about quite a bit on the channel, and where you have three touches here on a support or resistance line. Typically, when you come up for that fourth time, if it breaks through, it's typically a genuine breakout. Now you want confirmation here. You know, if we broke through and then we had a weekly close below this line, that could indicate a slowdown, that could indicate a failure here, but we're not there yet. So we're at the very, very early stages. We're not going to get altcoin season until Bitcoin breaks into new fresh highs and the S&P breaks into fresh highs. So we're looking as if the S&P's going to be breaking into fresh highs here as we speak, which is good, which we also had an early lead on because time, this entire time, everybody was very, very bearish. I was the most bullish right here because we had so many capitulation signals. The bear sentiment was like at bear market lows. So, I mean, the sentiment was clearly reset, which is what you want to see. And so there were lots of early signs that we were getting strength, right? So we broke through this trend line here and above the 50% level. So basically, since April of this year, we've been in good shape and we've kind of had a lead on that. While everybody was bearish, we knew that the chances were more likely based on the charts we were going to see higher prices and that we were going to at least target these highs. And now we're getting this fourth time breakout here. Potentially everybody's bearish too. This doesn't typically happen at a cycle peak. You know, even just going back to the last cycle, you know, we were pretty vertical and we did drop off very aggressively. And let me just pull the same thing here, maybe down into this level here where we were starting to. So here's the kind of the same signal, but a little different. So we broke trend. That was good. Came up above the 50% level, and that was a strong sign, but we failed at the 50% level. Basically came up to test it from the underside and failed again. Essentially, once we broke these lows, it was all over. Yeah, it chopped around a little bit, but I mean, that's, you know, it just led to further downside, right? And so that's the difference here in what we're seeing. So there were clear signs that we were getting rejection, and then once we broke these lows, we were likely going to see lower prices before we saw higher prices. That's exactly what happened. We saw lower prices before we saw higher prices, right? So then if we drag our 50% tool down here, once we kind of reclaimed the 50% level here, that would have been an indication that we were starting to see strength. Plus, we came down to test it from the underside, had one weekly close below, and then quickly took off after that. So that's kind of the difference in signal is we're seeing strength throughout this move right here, right? It was just V-shaped recovery. It's pretty much mirroring the COVID crash of the last cycle, which was about 5 years ago. And interestingly enough, we had cycle highs here in January. And then after we broke through, we did see higher prices. Then we had a black swan event. Same thing actually happened here. We had the 2017 peak basically here, and we broke into fresh highs shortly after, had a black swan event in March, which I just thought was very, very interesting. Like this right here is pretty much a mirror image of what we're seeing right here. And everybody's been saying, oh, it's not a V-shaped recovery. I don't know what chart they're looking at. This is clearly a V-shaped recovery. So anyway, we're not going to see alt season until we see higher prices in the S&P, until we see higher prices in Bitcoin. And then quickly, if I just go to Bitcoin dominance here and put this on a monthly chart, I believe I've talked about this before, but really we're just oscillating in a range here. And now we do have this trend line here. This is on a monthly chart. So these trend lines typically stronger, or support and resistance is typically stronger because they're able to either reject or hold for a monthly time frame. So they're typically a little bit stronger. And we do see that we kind of peak a little bit lower every cycle. Maybe that happens. We might be right there. But the other thing I wanted to mention, if we just go from the low to the high, right here. Bam. That's 36 months. Okay, well, let's project it from the low. And I'm calling this the low right here because I believe it is the actual price low. You know, we had a lot of chop down here, but this was the price low. Okay, 36 months from there, that puts us into September. So maybe we're not really expecting an actual alt season until September timeframe as far as Bitcoin dominance falling. We may get through this. We may have one final push in the Bitcoin dominance, get rejected here again, and then we'll be targeting the range lows here. So that's something that I wanted to mention. We're just not there yet. USDT dominance, I've mentioned this a gazillion times. We just have this trend line from basically forever ago. We dipped down below it very briefly, but now we're kind of getting this, we're kind of getting choked here, right? So USDT dominance is going to have to make a decision here on where it's going to go. Is it going to maintain this trend and keep climbing higher and break this downtrend that we've been in since 2022? Basically been in a bear market for USDT dominance, which is kind of crazy. But anyhow, it's going to have to decide where it wants to go. We've basically seen all-time highs or fresh high Bitcoin highs on every single one of these here. And it's basically supported the market for forever, the same way that we have kind of an all-time resistance line for Bitcoin going way back here. These charts are essentially inverse. So what would be really bullish is if we see Bitcoin bust through this kind of all-time resistance line, and we do get into an accelerated blow-off top for Bitcoin, which is quite possible, then we should expect to see the same thing in reverse for the USDT dominance, meaning money is absolutely rushing out of USDT and into Bitcoin and the altcoins, right? But until that happens, honestly, until we reach these lows, nothing crazy exciting is going to happen in my book. So we're just kind of chopping around here in the very, very short term based on the last move that we had here. We are basically getting rejected at this 50% here. And then if I got even more granular and just chose this particular move here, we're in weak territory here. So things are looking like they're aiming that direction. But these are the signals that you want to watch. I mean, because if we do break out higher here for the USDT dominance and lower on Bitcoin, obviously that's going to invalidate that thesis. I don't think that we're there yet. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm looking at. That doesn't mean that there's not opportunities in the altcoins right now, because if you look at the USD charts, like looking at something like SUI, for example, it's something that I'm looking to get in on. Let's see where we're at. I got into my largest position somewhere around in here, is when I basically bought the bulk of my SUI, but I also am looking for kind of a shorter term trade for my trading account. And so what I would like to see from here is I don't want to see it break this low. And what I'm kind of looking for is a break of this swing high here to put us in a daily uptrend. And that, to me, we would see some confluence. So that doesn't mean there's no upside. What I'm getting at is that doesn't mean there's no upside to altcoins, but for like those larger signal confirmations, that's kind of what we're looking for, and that we just haven't had that yet. And when we do get those signals, then we're going to have a prolonged, theoretically, if things rhyme, we'll have a prolonged altcoin season, because we just haven't had months on end where the whole altcoin space is growing. We've had small spurts, and then it basically gives it all back to Bitcoin in Bitcoin terms, which we talked about in the last video. So I kind of want to, there's a distinction there. It doesn't mean there's no opportunities now, but if you're looking for like confirmation or signals that will give you a higher degree of confidence, now that the problem with that is that you may be paying higher prices, but that's the premium, that's the insurance premium that you're paying on that trade, essentially, right? So there's kind of two ways to look about it. Well, there's many ways to look at it, but those are kind of the things that I'm seeing right now. And in fact, actually, we'll be in a daily uptrend. Say we close this candle. I doubt we're going to close any higher here, but actually we would be in a daily, once we get a new candle, we'll actually be in a daily uptrend right here. Because once we breach the high of this bar, we will have printed a low, which will be higher, and then we have higher highs, right? So it's actually at this point that we will technically be in a daily uptrend, and that might be the earliest place to try to jump in as far as trying to snipe the low relatively safely. You could buy here, right? Because you only have 13% to the low. So maybe you're able to use 5x leverage or something like that and give yourself that 20% to the downside, just in case we've missed it. But you could also place your order here if you really wanted to. Basically use 2x leverage to give the market room to breathe a little bit and maybe double bottom here or something of that nature. It still seems most likely to me that this is the structural bottom here, because we've talked about overbalances and time of price, and that if we do come back down, it will most likely be a higher low, which seems like that's what we're seeing right here. So anyway, those are just a couple ways to look at it. In the long term, we're still waiting on larger signals to kick off an actual alt season. Everybody thinks that it's done this time and it's only Bitcoin, but that's what happens every cycle. Basically, it's only at the point of desperation where everybody's convinced that you're not going to have an alt season because it's just been too long and this time is different. And there's too many tokens in the altcoin space that it's just not going to happen. That's probably a better time to get interested in the market. So anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to have a video here coming up soon about capital flows into the altcoin space. Honestly, shout out to No BS Crypto. He has a great channel if you want to follow, but he had some good insights that I kind of want to. He had some great insights and some good tools that he was using to kind of calculate the potential of what the capital flows might look like into the altcoin space. And so, yes, everybody's saying that everything is so diluted because there's so many tokens. That's somewhat true, but most of the capital is going to flow into the larger caps anyway. So yes, maybe you have 2 million tokens, but the lower three quarters or the lower the lower three quarters are going to get barely any of the capital that's coming in. It's mostly going to be the top 10 tokens anyway. So anyway, I'll leave it on that. I just wanted to kind of go through that. Everybody's waiting for this altcoin season. It's coming, I believe. I think we're almost there. We have the one thing that we're going to have to pay attention to here that we were kind of hoping to see. Let's see. We had, I believe it was on this chart here. We had like a descending wedge in play here, and we kind of had a fake out here where it was like, oh God, it's going to break down. This is why you got to be kind of careful with these patterns and wait for confirmation, because we do have this nice descending wedge playing out here, which is a bullish pattern. And we had this breakout here and it looked scary and oh God, it's all over. But we've come back into this pattern. We're not totally, we're not in the clear yet, but we're not doomed, right? But the other thing that I do want to say here, let me just put this into the weekly time frame. This is the last thing I'll say. Potentially this falling wedge here plays out and we're kind of squeezing. We're kind of just squeezed here and maybe we go higher. But the other option, honestly, here too, is that we just come down to, somewhere in here, which is where the dominance has bottoms before, and if we find good support. So it's not necessarily, it wouldn't surprise me if this fails and we do have that larger time frame coming in, like into maybe this bleeds into September area where we were talking and then goes up. Now this is also the dominance of the excluding the top 10. So obviously like SUI, those stronger ones are in the top 10. So those are more likely to have increased value in this period of time rather than anything honestly lower than the top 10, right? It's potential that we could continue to bleed for a while until we hit this kind of buy zone, and then maybe we start targeting higher prices. Maybe we start targeting this higher time frame trend line, right? But honestly, like I've said in the other video, like when alt season, well, I mean, we've been going down, right? And we've been rejected off of this trend line and we haven't ever made it back down to, this kind of range low here. So we could potentially, especially since we got rejected at this support line here. I mean, the next targets would be down here. So yes, we have this in play, but not going to be surprised. Like you know, we got to wait for confirmation, right? Like maybe this pattern plays out. It's quite possible, and we'll have to kind of follow that as it goes. And then maybe we've printed a higher low here on a very long time frame. But we'll just have to see. Anyway, I'm going to leave it with that. More to come. Like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below, please. Let me know your thoughts. When do you think alt season is? Are we ready? Are we going to take off tomorrow and actually get into SUI now because it's up only from here? We've found the low, or are we going to wait for larger confirmation to give ourselves a little bit more of an edge and a little bit higher chances of success? Anyway, till the next time.